Before I yield time to our next speaker, I just want to say that I'm told that we're rapidly running out of time, and I will not be able to yield additional time to anyone beyond the 5 minutes. So I now have the pleasure of calling on another new star in this Congress, Representative Bruce Braley of Iowa, for 5 minutes.
The gentleman from Iowa is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I grew up surrounded by heroes. My father, Bayard Braley, got permission from his mother at the age of 17 to enlist in the Marine Corps, and 1 year later found himself landing on Iwo Jima the same day that the flags were raised on Mount Suribachi. 30,000 Marines and Japanese soldiers lost their lives in 1 month on an island the same size as my hometown of Brooklyn, Iowa. My father saw one of his best friends vaporized by a shell burst, and we did not learn that fact until 15 years after he died. The same night that my father landed on Iwo Jima, another Marine from my hometown of Brooklyn slept under those flags as Japanese bombs flew overhead. Harold Keller was the real deal. He was the second Marine to reach the summit of Mount Suribachi, and he single-handedly fought off a Japanese counterattack and rescued the people you see depicted in flags of our fathers. When he came home to my hometown, he repaired milking equipment for area farmers. My uncle Gordon Braley served in the Merchant Marine, guarding Allied shipping lanes in the North Atlantic. My uncle Bert Braley served in the Army Air Corps, and my uncle Lyle Nesselrode served in the Navy. My cousin Dick Braley was a Marine Corps artillery officer at a fire base in Vietnam. These ordinary men taught me that patriotism is not something you claim by putting down others who disagree with your viewpoints. It's something you earn by the way you live your life, the respect you have for the institutions that make the United States a great beacon of liberty, freedom, and justice. When I return to my hometown of Waterloo, Iowa, I'm still surrounded by heroes. These heroes belong to the Iron Man Battalion of the Iowa National Guard. They are approximately 560 fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters from Waterloo, Dubuque, Old Wine, and everywhere in between. One of them, Ray Zirkelbach, is missing his second consecutive year in the Iowa House of Representatives because their latest tour was recently extended. A flag is draped over his desk in the House chamber. These heroes are the reason why I stand here today in opposition to the President's plan to escalate the war in Iraq. On November 7, 2006, the voters of this country went to the polls and clearly stated that it's time for a new direction in Iraq. Soon after, the bipartisan Iraq study group presented President Bush with a desperately needed blueprint for change. They recognized that the deteriorating crisis in Iraq couldn't be solved by military action. Instead, it required a political solution between warring factions for a stable democracy to evolve. The Iraq Study Group recognized that stay the course was a failed strategy and that 3 prior troop surges had done little to stem the growing violence. They knew that the Iraqis would never get serious about standing up for their own country until they were confronted with a timetable for redeploying our forces. After I was sworn in as a member of Congress on January 4th, I hoped that President Bush would listen to the advice of this bipartisan group whose recommendations he welcomed. I hoped that he would move to fulfill the promise of the Defense Authorization Act of 2006 when this Congress stated that 2006 would be a period of significant transition in Iraq, with the Iraqi security forces taking the lead for their own security so we could begin a phased redeployment of U.S. forces from Iraq. Instead, the President ignored the recommendations of the study group and chose to escalate the war in Iraq without charting a new course. To my friends on the other side of the aisle who disagree with the resolution we're debating today, by all means, vote your conscience. I'll be voting my conscience and joining well-known Republicans who agree that the escalation is a mistake. People like Senator Chuck Hagel of my neighboring state of Nebraska, who called the President's escalation plan the most dangerous foreign policy blunder in this country since Vietnam if it's carried out. People like former Iowa Representative Jim Leach, who said that the President's policy in Iraq may go down as the greatest foreign policy blunder in U.S. history. Well-respected military experts also oppose this escalation, including Generals Colin Powell, George Casey, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The president truly stands alone with a strategy that his own generals, key Republicans, and the American people oppose. The time is long overdue for the People's House to reassert its rightful place in our constitutional system of checks and balances. We have a duty to send a message that it's time for real change in Iraq. Change characterized by accountability and redeployment of our troops. There will be no more blank check. There will be tough questions and oversight, and I will work hard to make sure that this happens and ask everyone to support the resolution.